Welcome to Mams Talk, where Mams Talk Survivor, episode 4, as the title suggests, we are starting to boil. All of
Hmm.
the foundational stuff that's been like slowly simmering is starting to, overflow. So I'm very excited to talk about
Yes, me too. I'm
it.
very I thought you were
Yeah,
gonna
yeah.
maybe like introduce me, but
Oh, hi, Jess. God, at this point, if you don't know who she is, hit the road.
I think it would be pretty impossible to not.
Right. I mean, if you're here, what are we doing here? And I did introduce us because we're the Mams.
Okay, yes, we are the ma'am. Sorry.
Exactly. Right. Yeah, at this point you need no further introduction.
Yes, I am
Right.
here.
So, okay, so let's just talk about the damage control that Caroline really needs to do at the beginning of
Yeah.
this episode and throughout the episode.
Yes. Well, as someone who was affected by the damage per se, pretty directly because I was voted for, I think she did a good job, honestly, of integrating herself into the majority that voted against her. I think the fact that she didn't necessarily seem like she was going to hold a grudge about it made it easier to bring her into the fold for the next vote. I think a lot of people would have the tendency to kind of just get defensive and closed off after
Yeah.
that. But
Mhm.
she was really direct and honest about like how being left out of the vote made her feel and the fact that she like wasn't necessarily upset by it. She just wanted to know why. And that
Yeah.
was good like conversation for further including her in the next vote. So
Definitely. I was thinking the same thing. I think Caroline does a really good job of pivoting after this vote, whereas a lot of people would be like, guess my game's over. I'm on
yeah,
the outside of the vote, and like
right.
really like rallies to be like, okay, how can I get back on people's like in their good
Right.
graces? And she ends up in a position that's like pretty powerful here.
Yeah.
So good on her.
Yeah. And I think that like even if it helps in her case that it is true that she like kind of didn't really want to work with Dom. Like her and Dom were kind of at odds to begin with. So her
Hmm.
voting with him kind of just felt like, oh, well, no one else has given me another name sort of thing. But,
Yeah.
even if that was a lie, that's a good way to go about, denouncing whatever Dom did last round. And like, I was
Yeah.
just a follower. I didn't really like want that to happen, whatever, whatever. And it works. So
Yeah. I also think that there's a tendency for like if you just like ask someone like is confrontation bad in Survivor? I think a general like rule of thumb is like no.
yeah.
But sometimes like in this case we see like where it can be used for good like because she was so direct
Hmm.
and she was like hey guys just wondering like
Yeah.
why'd you leave me out like it allowed for there to be like an honest and genuine conversation rather than like you both kind of avoiding each other
Yeah.
because like there's like something dividing you guys now, you were able to like hash that out.
Yeah. For sure. And like I was glad for the conversation because it was uncomfortable at first, but like I didn't even really think about the implications of Caroline being left out of that vote, which is my own, I just was like, well, she's not working with me, so it's whatever. But like if she hadn't opened this pathway for communication, I would have never like gone up to her and apologized about it. And then we wouldn't
Right.
have been able to have like a working relationship going forward. So like it was also beneficial to me that we talked about it. So if I had been more confrontational and considered the implications of that and I had approached her, I think that also would have had a similar impact. So it's something to keep in mind as the game moves forward.
Yes. I also think it's interesting she even tries to make amends with Joe, which I think on the surface is fine, but we see
Mm-hmm.
that confessional of her being like, I don't know if I can trust him now,
Yeah.
because I thought that like we were each other's number ones, and he like totally didn't even tell me. But then like she seems like all okay just because she approached him about like why
Yeah.
did this happen, and then he explains, and
Right.
then we see like right after that he says like, oh well, I'm totally not loyal to that.
Yeah.
So I just thought that was interesting that she kind of like totally forgave him after a conversation that he didn't even approach her about.
Yeah, that is interesting. I think that there's like when it's someone that you've worked with in the past, there's like kind of a hopeful optimism of like, I can trust them even if they've proven me wrong because you have that relationship. So I think she was kind of, my interpretation of it is like maybe like someone in that situation might just sort of be like hoping everything's okay. And like you're
Yeah.
getting feedback that it might be. Um, and it's, I think it's one of those, I think Survivor is really one of those things where like you can forgive, but you can't forget because like it's good to get past those kinds of like, you know, disagreements and like move forward with in a working capacity, but like it's good to not forget who wronged you in the past because the chances are that they will do it again and they probably didn't regret doing it the first time. They probably only regretted that
Yeah.
you found out about it, you know.
Yeah, she's got to use her head more, and that's like trust your gut.
Yeah.
And like you can make the amends, but like you said, like you gotta also keep that in mind for the future. Like don't put
Yeah.
your full faith in the man that like literally left you out of the vote and did no work to try to repair that bond with
Right.
you.
For sure.
So that's just where I am with that one. And I think Joe's an interesting character this episode in general. Like at the beginning, he's doing like a lot of running around and like doing a lot to like make people distrustful of him. But then by
Mhm.
the end, he's in like kind of the best position on the tribe.
Yeah.
What's your
Yeah.
take on that?
I I don't know, his game really eludes me. I think he
Mm-hmm.
plays in a really like hard to pin down way. Like both playing with him and also watching him play, I kind of can't track what his logic is a lot of the time, but it ends up kind of working out for him. So, I mean, good for you, buddy.
Listen, it's fun to watch at the
Yeah.
very least. But yeah, I think Allie said that he was kind of like the people's princess of this episode.
Yeah.
And I would agree with that.
Yeah, I think that's true. Well, I
Yeah.
have to say, I think there was another People's Princess, and I think that she's in the room with us.
Why? Because I went up to Caroline, is that why?
No, I don't know. I just think that you did a really good job reintegrating yourself into the tribe after
Mm,
being gone for exile. And like part of it was luck because the vote worked out in a way that you wanted it to while you were gone, but I think that
yeah.
that's a testament to the fact that you had made your intentions clear with the people who were on that tribe and they sort of I think that me being on the other end of that like I knew you'd be I knew where you would want to go as well. Like I knew that like Dom was going to be someone that you'd be happy going home. So I felt like I was still considering you as part of the plan, I guess, because you had done good
Yes.
work to create
Right.
alliances before going to exile. And then I think that you really come back and kind of drive the narrative of the tribe, even after you're like being gone.
I mean it killed me to not be there for those
Yeah.
that first vote to
I
not
mean,
so
that's
like when
tough.
I came back I was like I need to talk to every single person
Yeah.
individually and see where they're at.
No,
Not
you
that you
literally,
saw any of that,
well, you
but
literally walked up and you said, "Hey, want to talk?"
hey, I
Everyone was
really want to
like,
see where everyone's at.
"Anyone want to talk to me?"
Yeah, and I think the only one that actually like made the episode was the alley conversation just
Yeah.
so I knew that CJ was talking about you,
Yes. Yes.
which like CJ.
Well, the funny thing is I don't even think. Well, no, yes, she did tell me. She did tell me that he was talking about me. I was trying to remember if she did because I wasn't sure if it was in the episode, but I do talk about it in the episode. I'm like apparently my name was in CJ's mouth. But yeah, that got out. Allie clearly betrayed CJ in that way, even though she was like, I think it was like she was considering voting me out the round prior, but then
Mm-hmm.
I guess when she made that decision to get rid of Dom instead of me, I think she kind of mentally switched her loyalty away from CJ, who very much wanted me to go, and I think just listened to Allie's decision about
Mm-hmm.
Dom in the round prior.
Yeah, I
So
think CJ's playing a dangerous game, and obviously like it bites him in the butt here where
yeah,
he's like throwing out too many names and
yes,
like in theory that's fine as long as you have like a cover for it. So it's like,
yeah,
you come back to the aces and you're like, just like I said your name, but like that
yeah,
wasn't real. Like I think that would
right,
have done a lot for like the damage control of that,
yeah,
whether or not that was true or not. but like
Hmm.
that's gonna get back to people in some capacity, and you cannot be throwing out so many names.
Yeah, I think that it's his like decision making there was interesting because I think it was like I think up until that point, like I was willing to stick with the the
Me
aces. Like
too.
I was like, I'm fine with this four, me, you, Allie, and CJ, and then bringing in various Lady Luck members where we needed to. But then I feel like he just completely flipped a switch, and I think that it's interesting because it seems like his entire motivation was to get to the merge to make it back to be with Ella and Steven. Which to me is like the best way to go about that would have been to kind of just lay low to make it to the merge, but instead he tried to play too hard and get like someone who wanted to be his ally, me, thrown under the bus when he could have just kind of like live and let live sort of thing, you know?
Yeah. And I don't know that he did enough to instill the trust that he wasn't going to do that because everyone kind of
Definitely.
already knew that he had ties to the other
Yeah.
side, and I feel like you have to make people feel comfortable that you're going to stick with them.
Yes.
If that's the game you're playing, if that's a like aces gotta like stick together kind of thing, you really gotta lean into it.
Definitely. Like I think that the fact that his ultimate goal was to reunite the original aces, like he could have used us to get him there. Because I think if he had been convincing enough, I think that we could have gotten Joe out in this round and stuck
Yeah.
aces strong, but he
Yeah,
just
this
was
was not a
not.
done deal. Although like
No.
it seems like it was like very obvious, like it definitely wasn't. But I think I want to talk about the aces for a little bit while
The
we're
actual
on that track.
aces.
Yeah, so the aces right now. I think for me what's happening on that tribe is like how important is the give and take of information?
Hmm.
Because it seems like the former Lady Lux right now are giving a lot of
Yeah.
information, and the former aces are doing a lot of the taking.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I'm curious of your thoughts on that one.
I agree. I think it is kind of like almost a mob boss mentality kind of happening. Like I think that because the aces know they have the numbers, they kind of feel entitled to getting anything that they want out of the original Lady Luck. And I think instead of the Lady Luck tribe kind of like using that to like plant specific information that might lead to the end that they want to see, they're just sort of giving up the gun of like, oh, I feel very good about like Liz, like Vanessa saying like that she feels very good about Liz
And Grant.
and Grant, yeah.
Yeah.
Which was like
Wow.
yeah, a crazy thing to say.
That blew me away.
Yeah, so especially like it's very risky to say that to the people who are the majority alliance, basically saying that you are not willing to turn on your own people,
Hmm.
essentially, while they're trying to figure out who goes home. Um, because like obviously you don't want to get rid of your people, but it's not the right way to make people feel like that's not what your ulterior motive is, you know. I mean, it's good because for her because Gabby does end up going, but it could have gone a lot worse if,
Yeah.
you know, they decided to target. I mean, Grant was the other name for a while, so
Right. Well, here's the thing, because yes, I think that the Lady Luck are giving too much information right now, but I also don't think that the aces are giving enough. Like I think
I
they're
think
doing
that's
too much
true.
taking where like yes, you have the numbers right now, but that's not
Yeah.
forever. Like this game is very long. If your goal is to like, you know, get rid of the us three, like me, you, and Allie, which is seemingly what the vibe is right now.
Hmm.
You need people on your side, and
Yeah.
you know, the more people you can get into your corner, the better. And I feel like they're not doing the work to make them feel comfortable.
No, I totally
It feels like a
agree.
strong arm kind of
Yes,
situation.
that I totally agree because that's sort of what I was getting at with the mob boss thing. It kind of reminds me of, funny enough, Gabby in Scan when the coconuts had the numbers and whenever the dolls would come up to try and strategize with her, she would kind of be like, well, why don't you tell us what you're thinking? Because,
Yeah.
we have the power over you, and I don't owe you anything because I could just vote you out if I wanted to. I have the
Yeah.
numbers, basically. And
Yeah.
that's not like that has its place, but I think that when you're trying to form a camaraderie against another group, like you're saying, you're like, it would be way more beneficial for them to be kind of like uniting people
Yeah.
against a common enemy.
I agree. I also think a really big part of this season is the message that whatever you're doing on your tribe sends to the other tribe.
Yeah.
And we've seen that like over and over again. Like,
Mm-hmm.
the what is that decision of the exile pick? What does that say about what the other
Mm-hmm.
tribe is thinking? What does this vote, Dom going, what does that say about our tribe? I feel like
Yeah.
that a lot of people are thinking about that this season, and it's
Yeah.
really making me like rethink if I were to play again, like how I would do like future decisions.
Yeah, I agree. I think there is a lot of speculation about where people's heads are at. I think especially because I think it's because like a lot of the pairs in previous relationships kind of ended up across tribes. I
Mm,
think that's a big part of it because, you're reading into like, okay, well, if Dom is still here, Liz should go, but Dom isn't. So now we move to Gabby because Joe's still here, So like that is kind of what the driving force. I think there's a lot of like merge management happening, like a lot of like
yeah,
pre um presumption about what relationships are going to matter in the merge, and it's less. I think this is a very like merge forward thinking cast versus like,
that's
well,
definitely
especially
true.
with the aces, I think because they hardly ever go to tribal, like they don't really need to play the tribe game, to be honest. Like they're like this is their first tribal council as the aces. Whereas I think the Lady Luck has to like think a little harder about how they're going to get to the merge because their lives are in danger much more frequently.
Hmm.
Whereas like the aces are kind of just like, okay, well, who can we like how can we optimize our merge experience? Because it seems like most of us are going to get
Yeah,
to the merge at this point. So,
yeah. I just think it's interesting because like, all right, Dom goes, and the immediate assumption is like, oh, they're just trying to pick off all of
yeah,
the Lady Lucks. Like
yeah,
that's the automatic thought, and I don't know. It's just like,
yeah.
and we see that before that happens too.
No,
Just
you're
like
right.
a
Like,
lot of presumptions about what's happening on each tribe.
yeah.
Yeah.
And a lot of them inaccurate.
A lot of
in
them
in
inaccurate for
in
sure.
many ways also accurate, but like I do think that there's a lot, and we both of us, I feel like we're guilty of this when we were on the original Aces.
Definitely.
um I think the exile part really adds to that, honestly, because you have to think about what the dynamic is because you're making a game affecting decision
About the other tribe,
about the
yeah.
other tribe. So like who are you going to send? That requires you to kind of have the knowledge of like what is going to impact
Hmm.
the game in the way you want it to. For example, like they're like, well, our plan was to send Max to
Right. That
exile.
and the swap as well, because
Yeah.
now the
Yeah,
people
that
on that
too.
tribe are your tribe. You
Right.
know, like Liz is like, oh, now all of my people, they're gonna go
Yes.
after all my people.
So we
So
have to send Max
now
to
we have that
exile.
tribe. So
Yeah.
I'm just curious, like if Dom wasn't the one to go, if it was a previous ace, like do you think our threat level would have been as high?
No, actually, I don't. I actually think that they would assume
That the Lady Luck had the numbers.
because they did, because you were on exile. So
Yeah.
I
And
think they would
even
have,
if it had been all the same people voting together, um, like, and we just went for like Joe instead or something.
yeah.
Yeah,
No,
it's
I
just
think
something
that's
to
a
think
good I
about
think
for the
that's a good
future.
point. I think that that does send a certain message because they don't know exactly how the votes got to where they got. They're making a lot of like snap
Yeah.
judgments about what transpired to get that result. So it is interesting to think about. I never thought about that as like a player, like
Yeah. So yeah,
like
that's just
sending
something
the
that
right
and
message.
same. That's why I'm kind of talking about it. It's
Yeah.
really an interesting dynamic that this specific like
Yeah.
setup brings. But yeah, all right. I also want to talk about What, okay, making moves too early. Is there such a thing? How do you ride that line? And the reason I'm asking this is because of the damage of Max's position after the Dom vote.
Yeah, I think that there is definitely harm in making uh big moves too early, and I think that that is like honestly kind of a big theme with the season, mostly because we have a lot of players who have a large target on them to start. And I think you can see that like people like me and you are kind of playing a deliberately like low key game in a way that maybe we wouldn't if we didn't already have this kind of like surrounding idea of this threat level. And I think someone like Max, who feels like he came into the game with not very big of a threat level, doesn't necessarily feel like he needs to be doing that threat management, even though he's clearly, presenting in a way that makes him seem threatening to other players.
Yeah.
So I think it's like you kind of have to, I guess, really like think about how you're being perceived, even if you don't think that you're going, even if you're just like, I mean, I feel like it's really easy for someone to be like, oh well, I mean, I'm obviously not a threat, like I'm not that good at XYZ and I'm not like making any kind of moves. But like
Yeah.
the fact that like, and the fact is that he like, while he was like a contributor to the Dom vote out decision, I think that the perception was a lot different. Like it was like, mostly because of Allie. Like she was running around saying, that was Max's decision and that was Max's move, like at every turn, which I think from talking to her, that was like a strategy on her part of trying to get the threat, like
To
the
be
target onto
fair,
Max.
he also did claim it.
Yeah,
Which I think is the mistake here. I don't think it's the
definitely.
fact that that move was made,
No, no,
but
no, no, you're right.
I think we did talk about this last week, whereas like you had almost equal
Yeah,
contribution to this as he
yeah,
did. Um, but like he really put himself in the front to be like,
yes,
this is kind of my move,
yeah,
and I think that's the mistake too early.
definitely. Like it's like, but that's the thing is like you shouldn't stop yourself from making the move. It's how you like market the move.
Yeah,
And like
exactly.
you can like there's just no reason no anyone needs to know that you did that until the final tribal council. You
Yes,
know what
I
I
think
mean?
that's the other thing. Yeah, I think people are obsessed with the credit of it all,
Yes.
and it's like you don't need the credit
Yes.
until you're sitting in those final three or final two chairs at the end.
Yes.
That's the only time that credit matters.
Definitely. And that's like hard because like it's hard for a lot of people. Like, and I'm someone that like I like to get recognition for when I do something. So it's hard to sit by and hear. And while I was watching this episode, I remembered how that felt because me and Max worked on the Dom vote together, and then everyone's running around saying, and that was Max's move, and Max, that was a really good move on Max's part, and blah, blah, blah. And I like
Yeah.
the urge to kind of like, oh, well, I was there too, sort of like bubbles
Well,
up in
that's
you
that's the like downside of it because if you then take credit
later.
afterwards and
Yeah.
people the perception's already in their head that
Yes.
that wasn't you,
Right.
now you've just said something that discredits you. And
Right.
we saw that with you last year where you
Hmm.
took credit for, you and Zach for
Yeah.
orchestrating certain
Yeah.
votes
Yeah.
and other
Yeah.
people were like, "But wait, we all worked on that
Right.
together."
Right. Right.
So
Yeah.
that's why I was saying like where's the line of the moves? Yeah.
Yeah. It's hard. I think for someone like me, I was never going to like I just was already trying to play low key. I was never gonna like insinuate that I was involved in that, like at all. I
Yeah.
also think it's like it's just so early. Like I don't even think anyone's gonna be voting for the winner based on that move
Hmm.
anyway. So like does it really matter? And like whether or not like if I get to the end with that as part of my resume and then I have to argue that case, I think that it's likely that there's going to be way more important things that I would need to talk about than that move. So,
Yeah.
does it really matter? I guess is my
Yeah.
question.
Because people do tend to kind of have that recency bias when they're
Yeah.
voting of like kind of the last couple votes that
Yeah.
happened. Um, but I will say if you do have things from the merge and pre-merge,
Yeah.
it it makes a more holistic
It
story.
definitely does, but they're completely different games. Like I don't think that necessarily being behind someone going home in the pre-merge is really the most valuable aspect of the pre-merge game. Like I think that like there's more like I don't know, like I think that like setting up your relationships for the future is a more valuable thing to be focusing on than being the sole person behind someone going home. Whereas I think once you get to the merge and it's an individual game, becoming the driving force for who goes home becomes a lot more important
Yeah.
for like because the tribe game is just different. It's like you're working with these people too, you
Yeah.
know.
That's a good point.
So
So yeah, let's move on to the twist of this episode, which is that both tribes are going to tribal council. I
mhm.
mean, first of all, when this was revealed, what were your thoughts?
Well, I just was like, fuck. Like I thought that I don't know, like we had just lost the challenge before and
Hmm.
that was like Lady Luck continued to lose. I mean, I it was my first time losing with Lady Luck, but the
Yeah,
legacy persisted that Lady Luck had not won yet.
it
And so
sure
then it
did.
was just sort of like you come up and you're like, "Oh yeah, like I'm so excited to like try again." And then they're like, "Actually, don't bother." Like,
Yeah.
and I just knew I wasn't going to win this for myself. So
Hmm.
like I just felt like and I think I was less like, I don't know, something about individual immunity like I don't I never want it that bad. I don't know if that makes sense. I just feel like there's more other ways to keep yourself safe than
Yeah,
individual immunity, whereas like tribal immunity is like no one goes home. Like it's just they're two different things to me. So like
I no, I totally agree.
once I heard it was individual immunity, I was like, oh well, this challenge kind of doesn't matter because I didn't think I was gonna win it, but also like even if I did, I felt like it didn't change that much. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, if you're in a good enough position, I mean, obviously you don't never want to be like too comfortable, but
yeah,
if you've put in the work to like put yourself in a position where either way you're not going home,
yeah,
maybe don't put that target on your back to win.
right. Yeah. Like I don't think that yeah, I guess for me in
Yeah.
this point in the game too, like it just felt so early to take a big swing. And then you see like Max continues to build his threat level in a way
Hmm.
that is like not great for him moving
Yeah.
forward. Um,
Listen, and I know people have thoughts about like throwing
yeah,
challenges. Not that anyone did that in this
yeah,
situation, but sometimes that is a decent strategy,
yeah.
you
I
know?
do
And
think that in this specific circumstance, it was good that he won it because I think that there's a high chance he goes home
oh, yeah,
instead
yeah,
of
yeah. No,
CJ.
I
Like
meant like
he
for other
for
people.
other people, yeah. Like
Yeah.
I like with them two specifically, CJ and Max being the last two standing, and we mentioned in the episode, it's like it was probably going to be whoever didn't win at that end point.
Yeah.
Especially because they both like outlasted like I know GMAC kind of dropped arbitrarily, but like they had outlasted the other tribe. Like they just
Yeah.
had shown good prowess in that challenge. And then on
Yeah.
top of Max's like claiming of this big move from last round, I think that the writing was a bit on the wall for him if he had not won it.
Yeah. Oh, so we do get the first vote for the aces, which
Yep.
is
Big.
which is interesting. We finally
Yeah.
get to see them like kind of scrambling a little bit,
Yeah.
and wow, immediate descent and distrust.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy. I couldn't even really follow the track of what was happening,
There
to
was
be
a lot
honest. Like it was
happening,
a lot. Cause yeah, I don't know. I really just like while I was
and
watching it, I was
they only had like 15 minutes to talk.
yeah. While I was watching, I just like desperately wanted there to be some like I don't know, like just like an upset of something, but like it
Yeah.
kind of just ended up being like the predictable, which do think it's interesting. I don't understand why Gabby continues to kind of be like the predictable person to go home on the Aces
Hmm.
tribe. I guess it's because of Joe, but
Yeah.
like,
And we will talk to her
yes, we will
momentarily.
talk to
So
her.
we will get a lot of perspective on what happened
Yeah,
in that.
and neither of us were there for that vote either.
Neither of us were
So,
there. So that'll be
but
especially fun.
Yeah, I just think it's interesting that like Gabby's the person everyone was able to kind of like come together. Meanwhile, Grant's the other name. I'm like, get him out. Like, why are you not voting Grant out?
Well, Grant's a name, and then Roos is also the
Yeah,
other
Ruse is
name.
the and ultimately ends up being the other
Who
name.
Vanessa says in front of
Well,
GMAC, which is
that was the craziest thing that I had watched. And that's why when Roos becomes the other name, I'm like, well, obviously Gabby's going, is how I feel. Like I felt like Grant was a much more realistic alternative. And it makes sense too, because like you can see in all of Gabby's footage, she's really pushing for Grant. And I like, and then she obviously ends up voting for Roos. But I don't know. I think that the Gabby Grant dynamic makes I think shooting for Roos feels like shooting a bit too far out of
well, I don't
your
think it's
range.
that out of whack. I think she went about it the wrong way in trying to convince everyone, whereas
Hmm.
I think she kind of had to pivot to just the Lady Lux.
Yeah, I mean, if they could have linked,
But she couldn't
but
have known that like Grant was like sort of
yeah,
working with him.
yeah, that's the hardest part is the Grant. Grant is like he's really playing both sides in a really good way, on the
Yeah.
aces.
But it does seem like it seems like she's making some traction with the Roos thing. Like it's not like a
No,
total
I
done deal.
agree.
Yeah.
I
Um,
just, I just think from me thinking about the tribe dynamic, I just think that Grant feels easier.
yeah,
Like he's
sure.
less insulated. Like, so if you have to pick someone to shoot at, if it's like you or them sort of thing, I just think Grant makes sense. But he
Okay,
is
okay,
very well
yes.
positioned. So
Short term, yes, it's an easier thing to get
yeah.
done. Maybe with more time, the Roos thing, maybe, I don't know.
Hmm.
But it seems like Liz and Vanessa are kind of strong-armed to vote just kind of with everybody else, which is
Yeah.
like, sometimes that's what you got to do.
Yeah.
But now what that does is now you're giving the power to the like Steven and
Yeah.
Ella of it
Yes.
all. Whereas I think if they had gone with the Roos position, I think now they're in like a good spot,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, no, I think Roos was the right decision. Like I
Yeah.
think ultimately Roos has we know Roos and GMAC have like some of the most powerful positioning in the
Hmm.
tribe, and they're a duo who's on the same tribe. So splitting them up is like
Yeah.
you'd be golden, you know, but I think it was too it was trying to get it to happen too. Like
For
it didn't
sure.
have enough
Yeah.
time to cook, you
But
know.
now the Lady Lux, like the old Lady Lux, are firmly at the bottom.
Yes.
Whereas, if maybe if you guys had worked together on this vote
Yeah.
with Gabby, that
Right.
would not have been the case.
Yeah, no, I
That
don't
that's
think
just my thought.
I honestly don't think Gabby going home is the right decision for anyone. I just think it
Mm.
was an interesting maybe Ella.
Yeah, for Ella,
But Gabby wanted to work with Ella.
that's
So
true.
I think Ella misguidedly wants Gabby to go home.
But I will
But
say, with a lot of the talks about relationships, I think it is
yeah,
smart on her part to be like, I just
yes.
got to cut that off at the
I
at the
think that
knees
that
right now.
totally makes sense. I think it's either you have two options with your preconceived relationship in this specific season. It's either you actually do work together and then you just deal with it, or
Hmm.
you one of you goes home and then you just stop any because you're gonna get the allegations. They're gonna happen.
That's true. So I do think that that's a good move
Yeah.
for Ella. And I
Yeah.
think that Steven, like I just think that I mean Gabby was distrustful of him. I think they were both just
Mhm.
like knew that the other one wasn't going to work with them. So I don't think it's necessarily a bad choice for them.
Yeah. I think that's
Yeah.
true.
That's what I have to say about that. Um, but yeah, so Gabby goes, obviously, we're gonna get her on in a little bit. But let's talk about the Lady Luck. So I think it also is a more interesting vote now that Max is safe.
Yeah.
Um, even though like obviously we do vote unanimously, which is also interesting with the aces. Like they do
Yeah.
vote unanimously, but they are a
Yeah.
mess.
No, no, no.
Um,
It feels very
but
like Big Brother vote unanimously, where everyone is just
mm,
like, I don't necessarily think this is the best thing to do, but I don't want to be on the outs of the numbers. So,
yeah.
like, just go to the person who has the most power and be like, who are you voting for? And then vote with that person, you know?
Yeah, but I feel like Joe's in a good spot. Like he's good with his girlies, as you
Hmm.
may.
Yeah, as he refers to them.
The girlies. Um, and CJ, it just seems like everyone's on board with him because he's
It
just
was
like
really
not.
just such an easy thing because we have this heavy hitters alliance that forms with me, you, Allie, and Caroline
Hmm.
that like ultimately makes sense for us to keep each other safe. And then on the outskirts of that, you have Joe, who is connected to all of us,
Caroline. Well, I
really.
mean, yes, and Allie.
Mostly Caroline and Allie,
Yeah,
but like kind of tangentially we're connected to all of us in some way. So we all kind of feel good keeping him around.
yeah.
And then Max is safe.
It is
So
interesting that like what three alliances were made on
yeah.
the Lady Lux
Yeah, because you have
this episode,
big blind, little blind.
which is a cute name.
Yeah, that was super cute. And then you and Caroline make a final two.
No
And
name.
then no name. And then she goes, "Oh, I haven't made a final two yet."
It's like I never, that's so funny. I haven't even made
This is
any
my
final twos
first.
yet.
This is actually my first
Ah,
final two.
Caroline. Now, why would you say that? That makes me feel like maybe maybe you have.
Yeah, it feels like a weird thing to bring
Hmm.
up, Caroline.
That was funny to watch. I was like, that's
Yeah.
a weird thing to say unless maybe you did have. Hmm. Didn't clock it in the moment, of course, but knowing what we know now,
Knowing
it's
what we
funny.
know now, yeah.
Um,
And then the Heavy Hitters Alliance.
obviously.
So,
Um, yeah, I mean, so there's a lot of gaming happening over
yes.
there, let me tell you. And
Yeah.
a lot of foundational alliances, I
Yeah, I
think.
think that this really kind of like sets the like Dom leaving is like the catalyst for something, but then like CJ is like the nail in the coffin of like
Mm,
what the structure of this tribe is going to look like moving forward, you know?
yeah. So it seems like right now, like Max is kind of
Yeah.
outside of whatever's happening, so he's got to really like put in some work to make that not the case moving
Also, I
forward.
it's possible I'm just forgetting, but I feel like he wasn't really involved in any game conversations after
Like
he won.
not real. I mean, he was like there, like people were like, "Oh, like CJ," and he was like, "Okay."
Yeah, like he was, but he wasn't really like contributing,
He wasn't like driving anything, which I do think is like
which
a
is
good
the
thing.
right thing to do, but I wonder if he took his foot off the gas too much because I think that a lot of people have the tendency to do that once they win individual immunity. Like,
Yeah.
oh, well, I'm safe this round, so I don't have to game this round kind of thing,
Hmm.
even though like you can still have agency in like what happens to whoever else goes home.
Yeah. And CJ's still trying to do the whole like let's break up
Yeah.
the couple thing.
Yeah.
But he still wanted to work with the Aces, which is another funny thing. Like
Yeah.
I think he would have done it if they bit on it, but it was clear that they weren't biting on it. So then he was like, "Okay,
Yeah.
fine, we'll do Caroline," but didn't mention that he said our names.
Yeah.
So that I think is a big flaw in
Definitely.
game.
I think it's interesting because like yeah, he wants to work with all of the aces who are but not the ones that are on his tribe right now, like
Yeah.
like he's like, man,
He did get a
aces
little bit like
he got
slot
kind of the
screwed a
short end
little
of the
bit.
stick.
Yeah.
He's like, Ace is strong, you guys, Ace is strong, but like
And we're
meanwhile
like,
is like but he wants us gone. I think he wants to work with Allie, but
yeah.
he also at a point I think said Allie. He was saying everyone's name, so I think he had said Allie's name at
Well,
one
no,
point.
he didn't say
No,
Allie's
you're right.
name.
You're right. Allie's name wasn't in anyone's mouth,
Which is a big thing because
which is a big thing. Yeah, yeah,
Allie goes,
yeah.
"Well, has anyone said my name?" We all go, "No."
That was really funny to watch.
All of us in
No,
unison,
literally all
"No."
of us. No, you can see like the wheels turning in all of
Yeah,
our heads.
it was funny. And then she's like, "Oh, that's weird.
Yeah, no, she goes, "Oh, weird." Anyway, made a mistake.
I've made a huge mistake."
I don't know why I said that. I don't know.
It's funny. But yeah, a lot of stuff going around there.
Yeah.
But I think that's about all I have for this
Yeah.
episode, unless you have anything else before we bring Gabby.
No, I don't think so.
Okay, we're gonna bring in the woman of the hour.
Okay.
Okay, here's our girl in her streamer setup. Welcome, Gabby.
Thank you for having
Looking
me.
looking stunning.
Thank you.
Um, CJ could not be here because he's like out of town or whatever. But um Gabby's free. So she's here.
The woman of the hour.
The one of the hour. And we're
Ooh.
so well, especially because we weren't on your tribe, like
Yes.
you
Yeah,
have a lot of insight to provide here.
maybe.
Maybe.
Well, we
So
did just talk ad nauseum about CJ's vote out because we were
Mm.
both present for it. So,
right.
so happy to hear about your sad exit.
Yes, of
It was
course.
sad, yeah.
So we have some questions. How do you feel like your relationship building was, and like how do you think that affected the decision to vote you out?
So I think I was like attempting to build relationships, but I think, as is now more evident after seeing what happened, people were very skeptical to engage with me at any level.
Hmm.
Um, and I could sense that, but also given what had been happening like prior to that last episode, where we were all kind of just like doing well, there wasn't really any real need to discuss like who are we getting rid of. It didn't feel like there were that many opportunities for me to,
Hmm.
actually attempt to
Hmm.
build relationships because I mean, now in retrospect, it's because people did not want to. They
I
didn't
ha
want to.
I do have to agree with you because I felt the same way the first two rounds of the aces. Like
Yeah.
I was completely like I felt iced out and like I didn't want to be the one to start
Yes.
talking to people. So I think we actually spent a lot of time not
Uh,
gaming together.
yeah.
I
Yeah.
feel like because we didn't like want to talk about like, you
I
know,
feel like the Aces tribe slash camp just had like a toxicity of
it
complacency
did.
Yeah.
happening.
We were like,
Um,
okay.
and then you had 15 minutes to talk, and
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
what happened. So I'm so sorry that you got the short end of
Um,
the stick. So a major talking point this season in particular
mhm.
is how previous relationships factor in. Clearly, you and Joe contributed in some capacity. How
Mhm.
much do you think that is, or if at all?
So this is like very funny because as we've been watching the episodes, we've been watching them together, and every time it comes up, people are like, "Oh, Gabby and Joe, like this is a problem. We can't." We're like, "We would never. We were not planning on working together ever."
Mhm.
We like
Hmm.
came into that weekend like we do not have an alliance. Like if it happens, it happens, but we have no intention of like working together. There was
Yeah.
no, and I think that there was like an absolute overestimation. And obviously, it's hard to say like what would have happened had I stayed in the game longer or, had we ended up on the same tribe. But even from like the original interviews that I did with Zach, I was like, yeah, I hope we're not on the same tribe. We both were like really hoping to not be on the same tribe. We were not going into this necessarily with, or not necessarily, we were going into it necessarily without a plan to work together.
Yeah.
And I think that that just was not apparent. I think that people probably couldn't wrap their heads around it. And I'm guilty of the same
Hmm.
thing with other people that
Mhm.
like have prior relationships and like those two, they got to be working together.
Yeah.
CJ and Steven, they got to be working
Well,
together.
Well, and
sometimes
sometimes
too.
you're right.
And sometimes they are, and sometimes they are. This was not one of those situations,
Yeah.
Yeah.
though.
I also just think it's like an easy
Yeah.
argument. Like no one's
Yeah,
gonna like say no when you present that. It's like, oh, that's a person who's on the block.
yeah.
That's not me. I don't care if it's true. Sure.
Yeah.
And I think also like people didn't really know Joe as
Yeah.
well at that
That's
point.
true.
So it was harder for people to be able to set aside our pre-existing relationship and be
Right.
like, oh yeah, no, he's somebody who's going to play the game for himself and
Right.
he's not necessarily going to, use his pre-existing relationships to
Yeah.
get through the game. So I think that
Well,
that's also like a big factor.
he was scary in his own right, doing his
Yeah,
own
he didn't need me at all.
but I do think that that is sort of like what the theme of it is like especially these like cross tribe relationships. Like you see it with Olivia and GMAC,
Yes.
you see it with Dom and Liz, and then now you guys like. So I think that it is like a pattern is being set.
You know what's interesting?
Absolutely.
It almost was, I think it was worse for the pairs that were separated.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Because they didn't have an opportunity to prove otherwise that they
Yeah.
Prove
weren't working
otherwise, and
together.
also like they didn't have to worry about like the other person being there and hearing it and getting
Yeah,
like, you know what I mean?
right.
Because obviously like me and you are together right
Yeah,
now, and like Roos and GMAC are together, and like we're kind of sitting pretty. So
yeah.
that's just an interesting thing that's happening.
Yeah,
So
I also think that the idea of this looming merge like relationship to come, like, oh, what are we gonna do if Gabby and Joe get to the merge together? That
right.
is a scarier prospect than a couple that's on the same pre-merge tribe together, I think. So I think that's part
Yeah.
of it
Yeah,
too.
there's a larger possibility for like at least the perception that there's a larger possibility that
Yeah.
people will betray their like
Yeah.
tribe
Mm,
alliances post merge in favor of their like out of game
Yeah.
relationships.
yeah,
Right. Like we're
that's
working
super
together
fair.
now until I get the opportunity to get back to my number one,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think that
So
that is.
if Joe was out of the game this round, do you think it still would have been you?
Like if he prior to this vote out, if he had
Yeah.
already been sent home.
Like
Um,
instead of Dom,
That's
I
what I'm
guess.
like. How much
Yeah.
do you
yeah.
think that was like the factor?
It seems like it was. So we'll probably eventually talk a little bit about this, but I was like super surprised at what happened.
Hmm.
I had absolutely no inkling that I was going to be going home during that round. Um, and I think that there were probably a variety of factors that went into that decision. I think that Joe was a big part of it because I think that there was a level of unpredictability about what was going to happen if we did make it to merge together, or if we made it further in the game together. But I think also I put a target on my back by like doing fairly well in the challenges up until
Hmm.
that point. And then given my past performance like last season, I think that that also like people were watching and I think saw that I was holding my own. And I think that that like in combination with Blood on the Clock Tower.
Blood in the Clock Tower being a main character this season.
Oh,
Like,
it
oh,
certainly was.
okay.
And we see the setup for the game right
And
now.
it's here.
Yeah.
We are sitting in it. But yeah, I think all of those things together was not helping my game at all.
Hmm.
And then just like struggling to grasp onto any relationships.
Yeah.
I had nobody to turn to. Like the possibility that someone would have helped me out at that moment was incredibly low.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And in fact, nobody did. Like nobody told me that I was in danger.
Yeah.
I had
Yeah.
no idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do
Yeah.
you think the swap configuration had like a factor in that? Like how like if it had been like a certain combination of people, do you think you would have been in like a better position?
Maybe. So I was like kind of confident at the point that we swapped because I was still with Ella, but I think that
Hmm.
like losing the combination of you guys was a little bit
Hmm.
tricky because I think maybe like uh given also everyone's suspicions of Ella and I working together last season, I think she was not inclined to
Yeah.
like pursue an alliance with me because she wanted to like distance herself from me as much as possible, even though we had not worked together
Hmm.
last time. Um, and so I think that if I had been maybe on a more mixed tribe with like people who I had not previously been on a tribe with, um, that would have worked in my favor. Like if it had been Allie or like you guys, maybe would have been a little different. Maybe not Jess, because we had already played together. We made it all the way to the end last time, but you know,
Yeah.
like it perhaps would have been different because I think that people
Yeah.
were maybe anticipating that Ella and I were going to work together, and I think that she wanted to terminate that as quickly as possible.
Yeah. That's clearly what her kind
Mhm.
of, I think that you only being left with her out of the
Yeah.
people that you had strong relationships with was like the worst case scenario for
Yeah,
you.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you feel
Sadly.
like you did enough to adjust to that swap tribe? I mean, clearly no, but like what could you have
Um,
done, I guess?
so it was interesting kind of watching it back because it's all a blur now, so
Hmm.
so far away. But I think I was definitely trying to get rid of some people that I thought were going to be either strong players or a problem for me.
Hmm.
Like I was really working on a narrative of getting rid of Roos or, breaking up Steven and CJ prior to that. So I was trying to do things, but I think it was like more so trying to chip away at people and not necessarily forming new relationships with
Hmm.
um, players. But I
Yeah.
was kind of open to seeing what would happen. Like, had Steven approached me or had GMAC approached me about something, I was like open to the possibility of working with people, but it was so hard to get a read on what was happening because up until that point, we didn't really have any reason to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you feel like
For
well,
sure.
that might be where it went wrong?
Hmm.
Like waiting for someone to come up to you.
Yeah,
Because I think there was some traction with the Roos thing.
Yeah.
'Cause, like Vanessa clearly wanted that to happen. I think the girls were
yeah,
like on board with it.
I
Yeah.
think so. Yeah.
So I'm curious if like there's anything else you could have done to like cement that more.
I think that there was a tension between people seeing me as a threat and like what I could have possibly accomplished. Like I think
Hmm.
that I probably could have done more legwork to try and get people to see Roos as a problem and to,
Hmm.
have him eliminated instead of me. But I think that like with the swap, we got Grant on our team, and I think Grant definitely wanted me gone
Hmm.
Hmm.
fast. And
Which I
Yeah.
I
think is a mistake, but
I
sure.
agree. When you guys were having your conversation about, and he was lying to you, but about Roos going,
yeah.
I was like, why can't I was like, these two are kind of like they should link. Like like these two should work together. Like, I don't
Yeah, and I
know.
was I was trying. I was thinking like, okay, Grant and I have like played together in the
Hmm.
past. He like knows that I am trustworthy, right? Which is
Yeah.
something that he is clearly very worried about, that he
Yeah.
doesn't like people that like turn on each other. So I was being very upfront about the fact
Hmm.
that I was not turning on anyone, right? Like
Yeah.
I see this as a problem. Like here's what's going on. I was trying to be as open and provide as much information as possible, thinking that that would be something that would be persuasive to him. And it certainly was not.
Yeah. Certainly
Well,
not.
yeah. Because we were talking about how I think for the previous Lady Luck in particular, I think trying to get something going with you would have made more sense because now they're at the bottom
Yeah.
after you go. I mean,
Yeah.
Grant thinks he has something with Roos, and Roos clearly is not with that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it was a mistake. I do.
Yeah, I think that taking a shot at the original Aces foursome
Hmm.
outside of you would have been the right move.
Yeah.
Um,
And
Yeah. I
again,
think,
leaving that actual pair in
yeah,
is
yeah,
is
yeah, right. It's like we're
interesting.
talking about this theoretical pair of Gabby Joe. Meanwhile, another pair is
There's
right
a
here in
real
front
pair
of you,
right
yes.
and one of them is immune, so
yeah.
it's kind of leading to one place.
Okay,
Yeah.
so let's wrap this part up. It's your second time
Hmm.
playing. The first time you made it pretty much to the end. This time like a fairly early boot. What have you learned?
I've I've
What's your
learned
takeaway?
the takeaway is you truly can never be too confident that you know what is going on.
Hmm.
Um, I thought that I was going to be more prepared going in the second time because I was like, oh, first time I went in like very naive. I really didn't know anything. I had no plan. I had no understanding of like what the social strategy could be. Like I came in just completely into an unknown situation and I came in this time and I was like, well, like I've gotten to see how about half of these people play. I know what the structure is going to be.
Hmm.
I know what to expect. I know this is going to really push me to my limits, and I'm ready. And I think that that was a mistake. And then being
Hmm.
placed in a situation where I was on a tribe where up until that point we had been really coasting along, we were doing very well. That I think just really solidified for me that like, oh, this is going well, right? Like
Yeah.
I'm doing okay. I'm not in danger. Everything's going to be fine. And I think that it was just a total mistake to be confident to be sure that things
Mm.
were going to go my way.
Hmm.
And I didn't think that I was being perceived as much as I actually was. Like
Yeah.
I totally underestimated the extent to which people were paying attention to what I was doing. Um, and so I think like you just can't be too comfortable. And
Yeah.
you either have to like be in the way in a way that you're like actually really making a lot of moves, or you need to be in the background. And I think
Mm.
I was just towing the line a little too much, where I was like being visible with my like challenges, my ability in those challenges was like pretty good. And that was a problem. And then simultaneously, I wasn't doing enough relationship building
Hmm.
or, social game kind of stuff on the side.
Yeah. It's a hard balance in the pre-merge to figure out how exactly like it's hard because if you do, yeah, like if you don't do enough, then you're gone. If you do too
Yeah.
much, you're gone.
Yeah.
So
And there's always this element of surprise, right? Like having the swap, that was something that we could
yeah,
have not have prepared for. So you can work as much as you want up until that point on building relationships, and perhaps all of the people that you are building relationships with end up on the other side and you're
right.
first on the chopping block.
Like
Yeah.
for like
And
that's
now that
literally what
relationship
happened.
building that you just had is now a
Yeah.
negative. Because it's
Yeah.
like, oh, well,
Right.
now they have people on the other side. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
I mean
Yeah.
tough.
that's exactly what happened to Dom.
Yeah.
Like to a T what happened to
Mhm.
Dom. So
Yeah.
it's totally possible.
Yes.
So what we've learned is you're never ready.
No, as much as you learn, you can still never know.
I agree with that. I think that like everything that has happened up to the game so far is never what I had predicted the way that
Mhm.
this like pre-merge was going to
Yeah.
go so
Yeah.
far. So
Yeah.
Always be on your toes.
yeah.
Always.
That's it. All right, so now is the time of the episode where
Yes.
we must crown an episode MVP and a silly goose of the
Oh
day.
boy.
Have we okay, so it's an interesting episode for that because there are two
Yeah.
separate votes happening, but
Hmm.
I would like to narrow it down to one each if we can, unless we
Hmm.
really can't decide. So should we break it down by tribe first and then pick
Yeah.
within that? So let's talk about
Sure.
aces first, okay?
Okay.
For MVP. Who are we thinking? Jess, you want to start first?
So I only picked one, and I think that inherently my bias of having been on the Lady Luck tribe makes it hard for me to think about the aces. So I would like to hear your points before I
Mine or Gabby's?
I want to go
Okay, well,
last.
Gabby,
Yeah.
go. I have my thoughts, but go
Yeah.
ahead.
Hmm. Yeah, it's kind of hard because like the swap makes for a really strange assessment of who the MVP was, but then at the same time, right, we had a challenge where we like immediately had to like fend for ourselves in a way.
Yeah.
Um,
All right, I can say mine. Sure.
yeah.
Um, for me, it is Ella because I
Hmm.
think
Hmm.
like her and Steven, I think are the only two that this is like really good for.
Yeah.
Because like especially for her because the relationship thing is clearly factoring into the season. So
Yeah.
her getting rid of you, I think, is like a good thing for her
Hmm.
game so that people are not automatically associating you two with each other. And she does kind of drive this vote
Hmm.
for me.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree with
I
that.
would agree with that. Yeah. I think
Yeah.
that's a good point. I
No
don't
other
really have a
thoughts?
counter.
Okay.
So
I think
Good.
at this point she was like of the original aces that were left behind, I think she was really driving decision making. She had a very critical eye on what was going on, and I think that she did like drive this vote.
yeah.
And she's not being like too loud about it
No,
either.
Yeah.
because Steven is the facade of
I
their
think Steven is
like
the front man,
yeah.
but she's like behind, winding him up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would agree
Yeah.
with that.
Okay.
Whispering in
So
his ear.
yeah, and he's just like so for the Lady Luck, I think there are a few contenders in our
Yeah.
book. We've discussed it already, just
Mm.
like the people who have played really well this episode, but without hearing us, I'm curious what your thoughts
Yes.
are.
Ooh, okay.
And as someone who wasn't there, you're like only going on
Just
Yeah,
based on the
only going
episode.
on the footage now in retrospect. Um, it's interesting. I think Caroline is like in an interesting spot because I think
Hmm.
that she's trying really hard and she's working really hard, but I think that people are watching her. Um, but I do think she's in a good spot. But actually, at this point, Kay, I felt like you were really like kind of pulling it together at this point. Um, where like this last episode, I felt like you really emerged in a way that I think makes you like
Gotcha. Okay.
an MVP
Yeah,
of the
I would
yeah.
agree. I'll take it because Kay probably doesn't want to talk about herself. But I agree. I do think that Caroline has a good go of it this episode because of the multiple alliances. Like she's the thread of like all of the alliances that are created. She's in all of them. And she really does a good job coming back from being left out of the Dom vote, which I think is really impressive. So I think she's definitely a
Yeah.
contender, but I would also say that Kay coming back from exile and immediately ingratiating herself into this next vote and very subtly pushing things in the direction she wants them to go, um, is also very impressive. So I would say those are probably my two
So the one that I have written
contenders.
down has not been said by you guys, which is
Oh,
interesting. But I will say Caroline was a contender for me for everything that you've said. The only thing that removed her for me was the fact that she was too trusting of Joe after I think her gut told her something's off here, which I think kind of removes her from the equation for
yeah.
me. Um, I
I will
have,
say,
sorry,
I
go
will
ahead.
say, just in general, because I feel like this is a consistent theme. I do think that we hold Caroline to a bit of a high standard because she's such a good player.
Yes. She does no, she does
So,
a good job, but I
yeah,
think it because she is such a good player,
yes,
she should know
yes,
that if your closest ally is not filling you in
yeah,
on what's going down, maybe they
yeah.
don't have your best interest at heart.
Yes,
That's just all I have to
I
say.
think it's totally fair to talk about that, but I do just want to acknowledge because she's been almost episode MVP like a lot of times so far, and I think that we keep picking someone else over her because of like one small mistake, but I think we just have to acknowledge
Yeah,
she's
I think she
still
does a really good job
yeah.
at coming back from that. I'm not
Yeah.
discounting it,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
that's
yeah.
just my one
Yes.
argument against it.
Yeah.
Because I think that Joe is in a really good position
Hmm.
right now. And that
Mm-hmm.
is who I wrote down. Because he's got people in his corner. I mean, he's doing
Yeah.
a lot, but like he's remaining this like wild man character who
Yeah.
like, why would you get rid of him? Because he's just
Yeah.
like he's doing his own thing. He's got this alliance with Caroline now. He clearly has his girlies that
Yeah.
have his best interest at heart. So that's my thought.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I agree with that. I think also at this point there was like a lot of chaos surrounding his game. Like I think he was so unpredictable that people were almost not worried about him because they're like,
Yeah.
whatever, he's gonna dig his own grave.
Yeah.
Like we don't really need to worry about him right now. We have bigger fish to fry. And I think that that is definitely like kind of a huge strategy, right? To
Yeah.
just
Hmm.
like build up this air of chaos and confusion, and then people will almost just be like so overwhelmed by it, but
Yeah.
they're not paying attention anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's a unique game, but it's
I can
interesting.
confirm that was sort of what the like the vibe
Yeah.
surrounding him was. Like it was like, oh well, he'll shoot himself in the
Yeah.
foot
Yeah.
eventually. Like it's fine.
So I guess I'll let you two decide. You guys can.
Um, I don't know. How are we supposed I know you can't decide about yourself, but I do feel like the fact that me and Gabby both said you
Yeah.
might have to lead to.
Or Caroline. You both said Caroline
Yes, that's
too.
We
true.
did.
Well,
We did.
I personally my pick was you. I
Oh,
just wanted
okay.
to talk about the Caroline
Yeah.
because I did agree that she did a good job. But I think you're right. Like I think that her read on the game is not quite as good as some other people such as you or Joe.
Mhm.
So I would say, I don't know. I would say you.
Yeah.
All right.
Anyway.
It's
Kay's gonna have a
me.
hard time with her being on the season and having to talk about
Like,
Woohoo.
it.
It's a
ooh.
weird thing holding up your own little trophy.
Look, it's
Like,
weird. And I've been in this position last season, so like
No,
it's
I
a tough
know.
thing. Yeah. to talk about
Some
yourself,
of us don't
especially
like to
when
be
you're
the center
doing
of attention,
well.
even though we make a show in a podcast.
A
It's a
podcast
weird
about
line
our
to
own
draw.
show.
But congratulations to me.
Okay, I have thoughts about Silly Goose, so
Oh, I have thoughts about Silly Goose, but once again, we've talked a lot, but Gabby, I
yes,
really do want to hear your thoughts.
yes.
Okay, so this is gonna seem silly. I think actually Caroline is my silly goose.
Oh,
The laughter that I had surrounding all of the promises, the high five cannot be seen high-fiving, but will pinky promise and kiss on it. That is incredible. And I don't think that that can be topped for me.
that's so fair.
That's hilarious.
She's
I
also
love
like,
that.
I will never
She
forget,
literally
like,
goes like, "Love you."
Yeah. But like
but we
seconds
can't
after,
high five. Well, it's because she was
not
in
high
the
five.
woods for the pinky promise,
Yeah.
so it was okay.
The high
But
five moment was just the like, wait, oh, you don't like the name or you want to be and
You want to be big
no,
blind?
no, we
Sure.
just can't be seen
no, we just can't.
high-fiving.
Oh, you want to be the big blind? Is that what you?
That was
The,
okay. That was
like
silly.
almost getting hit in the face. Like
Yeah,
That was
that was
silly
a
goose
joint effort.
moment for me.
Yeah.
But I think her slay on a lot of the other stuff,
Yeah.
for me, will eliminate her from silly goose.
I do just have to say that Caroline is so funny about the like what people are going to perceive her doing. Like, I remember in Manhattan, she didn't film like at all because she was scared people would think she was game talking if she had her camera out.
That girl is always thinking, let me tell
Meanwhile,
you.
we were like, people were filming themselves and it was like, look, we're eating rice. Like, look, we're building our shelter.
well, that's clearly game talk, Jess.
That's literally game talk. We were really scheming
Yeah.
about everything. But yeah,
I have a
she's just
feeling
funny.
that Jess and I have the same silly goose in mind.
Ooh.
So I think maybe let's just say it on three, and if we don't have the same name, then we'll talk about it.
Okay. Well, so are we going by tribe for this one? Because I have one for each tribe.
Sure. Okay, yeah, we can go by tribe. All right, so
Okay.
let's talk about the aces.
Okay.
One,
One,
two,
two, three.
three. Vanessa.
Vanessa.
Yes.
Okay. We were off sync, but
Okay.
because of Zoom, but it's okay.
Correct.
Yes, Vanessa's multiple moments of divulging information that she simply should not be saying were really like moments of laugh out loud watching the game.
Yeah.
Like, it was really like Bruce walks away and then immediately, at least in the edit, immediately, I'm so glad he walked away.
It was immediate. Let's be clear, it was immediate.
I'm so glad he walked away because I think that we should vote him out.
With GMAC there.
GMAC right there.
I had the privilege and honor of watching Jess watch this for the first time.
Yes.
And
Yep.
that and her being like, me, Grant, and Liz are so
close.
tight.
We're so tight.
Both of those moments, Jess was like,
girl, what? Girl, what are you doing?
So yeah, say what you want about the Lady Luck then. I didn't have a name, but go for it.
My thought about the Lady Luck is just, I think it's so funny that Allie says, is anyone talking about, have you guys heard my name? No. I've made a mistake. That's one
And
of
how
my
could I
favorite
forget
moments.
that?
Because it also like, I mean, that one is especially funny for me just because I was there and I remember how poignant the awkward silence of us being like, no, I haven't heard your name. And then immediately all of us sort of being like, interesting. Interesting that's the case.
Allie was also like going around and being like, yeah, Dom, smart move. I feel like every conversation that she had started like that.
She said it so many times. I was like, girl, we get it.
Drop it.
Drop it. I also remember in person, because I was there for most of the times that she said it, I was like, girl, you gotta let it go. Max is currently safe. We can't do anything about it.
Huge move.
Huge move for Max. Crazy move. But I do think probably Vanessa's sillier. But we can discuss.
I think the two moments versus the one Allie
the one moment. Yeah. I did genuinely laugh out loud at both Vanessa moments, so I will say that I'm happy to give Vanessa the title.
Agree? Yes.
All right. Congratulations.
Oh, I forgot
Vanessa.
about the news. I was like, "Where's the earring?"
She gets her silly goose badge.
Classic. Let's go. Her silly goose shield.
Con Congratulations, Vanessa. Also, oh wait, we didn't even talk about this silly goose moment of
What?
Vanessa when she's voting you out and she's like, I don't want to do it.
Oh
No, I don't want to. And then she's like, all
Yeah.
right, okay, fine. Okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, that was funny too.
Incredible.
She's an
Another one I
icon.
laughed at. I laughed really
Yeah,
loud at.
she's an icon.
Oh my
And
God.
we congratulations.
Yes, we're blessed to have her on our screens.
Yeah. So
Okay,
that's really
that's the
all. We have
show.
let me tell you, next week, first of all, double episode again.
Yep,
So get ready. Two people are going, and it is spicy.
crazy town.
Really, really spicy. So do not miss it. Don't do that. Okay? And with that, the mams are, oh, come on, are signing off.